Hello there. If you're tuning in, I'm going to wait for a few people to get in board here. We've got some other great questions and a lot of great RSVPs for this talk we're going to have today. So I appreciate your continued interest and your enthusiasm about what we're doing with dog parks and for dog friendliness and communities all over the place in general. So very excited to talk with you. I'm going to play a little videotape for you, just like we did last time. Last month, we were talking about the future of dog parks, where they came from, where the first one was, how they got to where they are today, and where we look to have them be in the future. So if you missed that one, that's available for replay. Just scroll down and I have that pinned there for you to see. If you do have questions, I have a couple of QR codes at the end here, or you can always put a comment with one of the recordings on any of the platforms, and I will certainly get back to you with an answer, or I will push somebody toward you that has the right answer for you. So before we get started with the actual discussion, I want you to watch a short video, and I want you to pay attention to the sounds of the video and the experience, and then we'll talk a little bit about how that affects a dog park experience or dog play experience in any scenario. So you're ready for this? Go ahead and start watching.
Good girl. Yeah, we'll put those away now. Yeah? You want to chase the ball? You want to chase the ball? Yeah? Ready? Ready?
He'll bring it back.
Come on, girl. You're just feeling a little... Good girl.
So as you can see from the video, there can be a lot of changes that happen in a dog play space that are completely out of your control. Some of those things will be talked about during our conversation today, and a lot of them will not be even obfuscated. So if you want to dig those up and send them to me, I'm certainly happy to help you with that. So let's talk a little bit about what we saw in the video. That was actually taken in the Pacific Northwest in one of my many dog park visits through all of my research for Wagtown and then for Smart Dog Park. And as you can see in there, that was actually in that nature setting where, surprisingly, it was completely open. It was right next to a swimming pool area, and on the other side there were some ball fields, and then there was a road nearby that came up to where the dog park was. So the way that they had the dog park structured, you'd think, by a pool and by ball diamonds and by the road, it'd be like, in a fenced area, whatever, right? There was no fence. And the only thing that told you what to do with your dog was like a 6x6 post called Oreo board, it's called. And it said on one side, dogs on leash, and it said on the other side, dogs on leash. And there was a post. I think I might have seen one maybe half an acre away, but that's all you had. There were no rules posted. There's nothing there. And so in theory, that would be like a really bad scenario. But what you find is that in different parts of the country and even different parts of the community, dog behavior and human behavior can vary. So that's part of the reason I wanted to talk to you about that is, even though this was a really nice wooded kind of area, it did have some distractions. And as you can see from just the sounds of it, there are a lot of places where things can go very wrong at the dog park. So let's take a look at some of the things that were on that list. And I'm not going to play it again because you have that super intro with the applause, which I'm sure you're all applauding right now, right? So we won't go through the whole thing, but when you do the replay, I encourage you to look at that when you're doing one of the steps that we get into, because you want to take a look at that and say, what could go wrong? What could go wrong? What could go wrong? What could go wrong? Smells, children, loud noises, congestion, nervous owners, and ask yourself and your team, is this a factor that might contribute to a crisis at the dog park? Little one, big one, anything across the board. So we're going to kind of talk about how you change your mindset, basically, so that instead of creating a space and then, prepping for the best and then hoping that everything goes according to plan, there may be a problem at the park. So you pull your team together to address it and figure out, who's going to do what. Wrong. Don't do it that way. Do not do it that way. I don't care if your park is not even built yet and you're doing it now. I don't care if it's been there for 50 years and it's solid and you never have any issues. You should still do the following 5 steps. So let's talk a little bit about that. Okay, so one of the issues and one of the reasons that this crisis communication plan can be something that needs to be a little agile for you is the fact that with present day dog parks, you can see a dog park experiences are very influenced by these 4 factors of passion, fear, protection, and winning. And what I mean by that is when you go to a dog park, you're around dog people, right? And dog people are passionate people. They are very in love with their dog. They don't think their dog does anything wrong. And they certainly don't want to be told what they're doing wrong, because when you talk to people about their dogs, that love comes through, and sometimes it's not very productive. So you've got that in the mix, and then you've got fear. If you are going with somewhere with your dog, I don't care how strong you say you are, there's always a little nugget in your mind of, I hope my dog's going to be okay while we're out and about. I mean, we always have that nugget, but when you leave the home, there's a totally different dynamic, right? There are hazards that you don't have at your house. So there's a natural fear that comes along with going to any place, in particular dog parks, because we know that they can have some problems. And then you have protection. So not to be, gender related, but the term mama bear is real. And so I don't know if you've experienced that feeling before, but I have. And I will say that it changes you to a different person sometimes. And so you could say things to people that you might not ordinarily be. You might not be as wanted. You might be not as cordial. And a lot of that is protecting something that you, in many cases, see as your child. And for some people, their soulmate. So imagine what your reaction would be to being passionate about something, a little afraid something could happen, and now there's a threat to that protection. And so you need to get your hackles up. And then there's that experience, especially in the Western culture, of winning. So there's a winner and there's a loser, right? In all of these things. And we certainly don't want to be the loser. So we fight for ourselves, for our dogs, for our opinions. And as you can see, that's definitely a recipe for some really bad situations in any environment, but particularly in a dog park, what we're talking about here. So what we want to do then for the future of dog parks is have dog park experience that are enhanced by those things. So look at it the other way. If you have people who are passionate about dogs, they're going to be committed about how they can improve the experience. And they're going to be looking at fear in a way of, how can I create a fear-free experience? How can I give freedom of expression in a way that doesn't endanger my dog or bring me to the dog park with fears, which will then be transferred into the dog and their behavior and the people around you. And then the protection, if people are already in a stance to protect their dogs, how can we create programs? How can we train people so that when they do come to the dog park, that they have tools that they need to sort of squelch down a little bit of that fear and use their passion to then make winning defined as everyone is heard and everyone understands what's going on. We're transparent, and we're going to use our passion to create something more efficient, more sustainable, and more enriching for everyone. So that's a better experience, right? So therefore, we're going to talk about this crisis communication planning. I tried to find a photo that wasn't stock, but there's nothing that would match this, right? So anyway, so today we're going to talk about that moment when you're like, oh my gosh, you're calling somebody, and you're like, we thought maybe something would happen and you're not going to believe, and here's what's going on, that call. And that puts you into a frame of mind that is very dangerous from a PR perspective. My background has a lot of PR management in it. And, it sounds callous, but this is a PR nightmare. on many levels, and not just for you and your dog, not for you as a person, but the dog park and your entire community. And in some cases, state. It can affect tourism, for instance. And it seems like a stretch, but really it's not when you think about how much people talk about what happens at dog parks and how much it's covered in the press and things like that. So it can really affect things. So let's talk a little bit about this. So first of all, here's my my moment of fame here. So this is my background. Let's put it so you can see it. So I'm not going to go through this whole thing, but basically I've gone all over the United States. I've talked to more than 700 people about everything you can possibly think of related to dog friendliness. And part of that was about dog friendly infrastructure and how it can impact the welfare of the animals, the economic vitality of the area, and a number of other factors that are involved. So I've been involved in animal advocacy, in culture shift, and I've been a speaker for international company, just all kinds of things. So bottom line is, I love making culture shift changes that are, sometimes difficult, but incredibly rewarding, and they impact the livable cities component and so many other things. So I'm excited to do it. And that alone is one of the things that I want to share with you is that passion that I was just talking about. That is it. I want you to join me in being a part of the future of dog parks. Okay, so here's a question for you. Have you, if you've been to a dog park, have you ever witnessed a problem at a dog park? If you've been to one, I'm guessing that there's been something. And it could be as simple as a bad parking spot selection, or that the porta potty isn't maintained up to your standards, or that there are no poop bags there. Now that's like a facility problem, right? And then you have a situation where maybe they don't have the right gate situation, or that there are sections of the fence that are up. So again, these are facility questions that can cause crises, but they are out of your control to some extent. So you need to bring in those people into the conversation, right? This is all going to be about identification of potential problems, and then the preparation of materials so that you can be in charge of the situation instead of the situation being in charge of you. So as you can think, there are probably some things that you've seen going wrong at the park. And here is an observation for you. One, it's pretty much always their fault, right? And your dog is clearly more awesome than theirs is. So again, that fear factor of I'm going in, if somebody is coming at me or my dog, literally or physically, literally or figuratively, if any one of those things happens, you're going to be in this position of taking your dog's side naturally, right? So that's terrific, but that doesn't put you in a position to be approaching people with the right mindset of getting along, collaborating, and finding solutions for things, whether they be an immediate need or a long-term need. So what we want to talk about then is 5 things that I absolutely positively want you to make a promise to me that you're going to do about the future of dog parks. We're going to have better crisis communication planning, because I didn't put the word up there, but it happens, right? Things happen. So 5 crucial steps for you if you're going to be managing, creating, using, being on the board for it, supplying materials for it, giving guidance for integrating that into your community planning, whatever the case may be. Please use these steps and then repeat them at least once a year. Okay. First step I want you to remember is that step 1 happens before anything happens. This is not the process that you use after there's a problem. If you do have a problem, use the process. You're just going to have to do it very fast, very well, and then hope for the best. But this process is about being ready for that. And to do that, we're going to follow a simple formula here. Okay, first thing, and as I mentioned, this is before anything happens, right? You're going to hear that from me. Okay, investigate and recognize the potential impact of the 3 sources of crisis at the dog park. So we already talked about that it could be humans, because we all know that humans many times get the blame for problems with dogs, and it is appropriate. So many people have issues with the management of their dogs, and sometimes the management of their own ability to effectively communicate with each other, or how to handle conflict. And so we'll be talking about that a little bit more with Deborah Hamilton, who's amazing and knows all things related to that. But today we're specifically talking about when those things happen, what are you going to do about it? So you need to realize that there are going to be conflicts and complications related to just human interaction. It's just the nature of who we are. And then you have the facilities we just talked about. There may be some facilities, infrastructure, management, the availability of some things that may be a cause for concern. And then you have the dogs, which, they're perfect, right? But not always. So that's going to be a factor. So when you look for what could go wrong, those are sort of the three categories that you can put into these buckets of what you're going to do about it. So this is what I'm talking about. On the one hand, we have these humans who are like, I know what I'm doing. My dog is trained. They sit, stay, we're good. They can even hold a treat on their nose for like 30 seconds. So they would certainly be good at a dog park. And if there is a problem, it's probably not my dog. And then you have facilities. So they have very little training, generally speaking. In a research project that I did with decision makers and leaders in the parks and rec industry, almost 70% of them have no training, have not been trained in how to read dog body language to stay safe when they're doing their job. They have train as you go or learn as you go training. And so there's not a lot of support, whether it be from revenue perspective. There's a lot of, and this is across all industries, we'll add this and then so-and-so can handle it because they do management of those same kind of operations in other sectors of our business. And you wouldn't do that for a pool, right? That's a very specific niche usage with a lot of complicated components that need to be weaved together, right? But we do that with dog parks. So you're already setting yourself up for failure that you're not training the people on either side about what that experience expectation is. And then, of course, we've got the dogs. And like I said, poop happens, right? So they're going to be dogs, right? Don't expect them to be part of the solution, all right? We have to stop pointing to the dog and saying, that dog is the problem. There could be a dog that is a problem at the park because their behavior is eliciting either reactions from other dogs or that it's harmful to them themselves, or it's, dog on dog, it could be dog on human, it could be human on human. So there are so many different interactions, but we can't expect the dogs to be the rational ones here. We can't expect them to take the brunt of the responsibility for the what if of what if something happens. Okay, so I think you can see from this guy, he agrees with me. It is not the dogs. Okay, so, and remember, step one happens when? Before anything happens. I'm so glad to hear you repeating that after me. Okay, so this will be great for those of you who are worriers. You are going to have to think of some catastrophes, and I would encourage you to do it with cocktails or something like that. So what I want you to do then, and this is going to be horrible, but very important, okay? I want you to sit down with some friends, people who've maybe been to dog parks, people who manage dog parks, people who build dog parks, just dog lovers in general, veterinary professionals, anyone that you think might have an opinion about what could go wrong at the dog park. So you take the facilities, the humans, and the dogs, and then you run that through your cocktail strain, right? So you say, okay, with regard to humans, what could go wrong? With regard to facilities, what could go wrong? And with regard to dogs, what could go wrong? So there are some things that are out of control for the dogs that they might contribute to a problem by having ticks, for instance, when they come into the dog park. That's something where you need to address it in a different kind of way. So if there's a rampant outbreak of pests in that park, that's a crisis. How far does that go in? How far does that go into what you need to respond with? How does that affect that community of users and the community as a whole? And then you have the facility stuff, right? So you need to take all of those components and then sit down and just think of minor like nuisance kind of things all the way up to things that are horrible that are going to be on the news and maybe on Inside Edition or something. Been there. That's difficult to deal with. So I want you to do that. It can be hard to do. And when you're doing it, ask yourself, is there more? So if there's going to be a problem, there was a bite at the park. Okay, that's that. Is there more? Yes, it involved a child. Is there more? Yes, there have some serious injuries. Is there more? Yes, one of our employees has been disclosing medical information about them. Is there more, right? So you can go down this wormhole and you can figure out, okay, well, if those are all the things that can go wrong, then what are the things that I can do right now, that can help me if that does happen? Okay. And then step 2 is happening when? Before anything happens. Step 1 also happens then, by the way. Okay. So here's step 3. I want you to assess the incident. Is it isolated to the park and that moment, or does it affect the community as a whole? And I will tell you, they all affect the whole community. So you can live in a community. I know of one that I've visited, and they have several parks, and each one of them has its own personality, which is true of all parks. But they sort of get a reputation, or they have questions about what they're doing. And sometimes that can work for you, and sometimes that works against you. But when you have an incident in the park and it involves dog people talk. And then there's Facebook and there's Twitter and there's Slack and there's WhatsApp. There are all these communication channels where all this information is getting out. And you know how it's like the telephone game where something bad happens and all of a sudden it's this massive thing blown out of proportion. The details are wrong. They got some of the facts screwed up, whatever the case may be. Now this small incident at the dog park is now broadcast throughout this network of passionate people who are protecting their dogs, can be fearful, and they want to take action on that. So again, anything that happens, consider it to be something that everybody's going to find out about, even if that doesn't happen, okay? And step 3 happens before anything happens, right? I should make a song about that. I know you want to hear me sing again. Okay, step 4. This is where you're going to promise me that you're going to do this because this is very important. Okay, you're going to make a pledge to me right now and determine and document who, what, when, where, why, how. Okay, we've done those for years, school, whatever. I'm sure you've gone through that process. It is true that PR is good, but there is such a thing as bad PR. I've worked on some really horrific public relations situations, and it is obviously more fun to pursue the ones that are fun. Like there's introducing this amazing new platform that's the future of dog parks. That's one story I could tell. But then I've had stories where people have died, or that there was misuse of funds, or that just some horrible things have happened that I've had to manage in terms of how that is communicated internally and externally. So that could be a situation for you at your dog play space, whether it be public or private, whatever it is, you're still going to want to follow these steps. So the who, when you get into that, I'm talking about who is allowed to talk to the media. Okay. So if you have someone who has never been on television before, if they've never even done FaceTime before, that's not your person. All right. And if you don't have that person, you need to find one, because you need someone who can talk in a camera and not freak out. Because once you get on camera and the newscaster is standing there right next to you and they ask you a question that you weren't prepared for, you're going to melt. You're going to melt. And that's going to reflect on the situation, your ability to manage it, and the park that you represent. So the who of that needs to be really figured out in advance. You can't be in a situation and then go, I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. No, I'm not doing it. That's not the good scenario there. Okay. You do not want that to happen. So decide the who. And if you don't have them, find one. Get them soaked in your message and your mission and what you're all about, and then help them understand your position. They need to be a part of your organization, not just someone you bring in to talk for you. Okay. It's got to be legitimate and genuine, or it's never going to work. You can fake it, but you're going to break it. Okay. So you bring that person in. And if you have someone who's willing to do that, then just assume right now that they're not as good at it as you want them to be. There's always room for improvement on those communication skills, thinking on your feet, and they should be fluid with what else we're going to be talking about here. And that is what are they going to say? Okay. I worked with a client one time who I will not mention, and probably the biggest job on that project was to get this person to not say anything. So there were a lot of reasons why not to say anything, but the urge to say something, especially if it's your business, oh, there's no bad PR, our name will be in the paper. Well, it's just too easy to Google what you've done wrong, right? So those days are over when you could brush it under the rug and, well, nobody's going to know. In a couple of weeks, everyone will have forgotten. Well, it's still out there now, right? With social media, it's out there. So if something has happened, what you say will be out there forever. So if you say it wrong, if you point the finger at the wrong person, if you say things that you're not allowed to say, let's say that you're working with law enforcement on this, you can't go around telling everybody what the legal team is doing or the law enforcement team is doing or what first responders did or what's happening at the hospital. You're going to be intruding on people's lives and sharing private information. In addition to that, you're setting yourself up as a liability for the organization, and you're opening yourself up to some kind of litigation, or that someone could come after you for any number of reasons. So don't speculate, stick to the facts and stick to what you plan to. And we'll get to that. The where. You need to figure out where are you going to be doing this. If you are going to be talking about it at a site where there's relevant information that would help your story, then have it there so that people can really understand what's happening. Okay. But don't worry about that if it needs to be Zoom. Don't worry about if it's on the street talking down the sidewalk. it doesn't really matter. What you need to be is well enough trained in your mind and with your resources that you create, so that when you are ready to talk with someone, or more likely when they call you, and I will tell you, when the media calls, you can't call them tomorrow and get back to them. They want the answer right then. And if they can't get it right then they usually want it in 5 minutes. So they want that story. And if they don't get it from you, then they're going to call somebody else. And it may not be the who that you have designated to share this message with people. Okay, then there's the how. And this is where it's tricky, because if you're saying that, let's say that Beth, okay, you're going to be this person that's going to be the point on this. So, how are you going to get the message out there? Well, now you've got one person who's handling all of that, but you could have, there's Twitter, there's Instagram, there's social media, there's LinkedIn, there's the newspaper, there's broadcast, there's billboards, there's word of mouth, there are public meetings, there are communication spaces, there are coffee shops. All of these places are, destinations for having your message get out. And so you need to remember that you need to be able to cover all those bases, and that they're willing to have your information there. So creating that web of information sources is going to be important for you to do now, right? Before anything happens, because you need to be prepared so that you can go into action without having to do that legwork to find out if it's even possible. Okay. And then the why. Why are you doing this in this way? Okay. Because you want the right message to get to the right people at the right time. That's classic marketing, but it's also common sense. You need to be respectful of the people that are involved, and you need to plan for it in advance. So everything that I have talked about, I need you to put these things together. Who should talk to the media? What do they say? When you should engage them? Where is ground zero? How can we avoid misinterpretation? We have to be transparent, right? And then why should I plan for this when nothing can happen? Please don't say that question. All right. Why should I plan? We have a great facility. We have technology so that we can have an eyeball on everything that's happening. I love the idea of having a park with like a cam where you can kind of see what's going on. Is it crowded? Is it not? Are those people there that maybe you guys don't get along? Figure out ways that you can say, these are all the things that could happen, and how can we lower that risk? But also, how can we lower the risk of making it worse by the way that we handle it with the media, but not just the channel of the TV that came to see your site. It's also the users of that park, the people that are new in town, the realtors that are looking to promote your community. If they're saying, hey, this is a dog-friendly community, so come live here, or I'm a workplace and I say, come here, it's a dog-friendly place. We all love dogs and we all get along. And then there's a thing in there about a knife fight at the dog park, which recently happened at a dog park that I knew. So it's like, are you kidding me? So we really need to realize that the impression that you're making with the dog park can be as, in the ether as just conversations. And so I really need you to make this plan happen, document those things, and be ready for it. Because step 4 happens before anything happens. Can you imagine doing all this work after you find out that there's a bite at the park? After you find out that there's an outbreak of something, if anything happens like that, or even just a simple misunderstanding where people took it on social media, if you don't have a plan for that, you're going to be scrambling and you won't even know who's supposed to respond. That's crazy. Don't do it. Okay. And at that point, you know what you're going to be doing. You know what you're going to be saying. You know when you're going to say it, where you're going to say it, who you're going to say it to. Now, match your resources with your talents, and then arm them with those relevant tools. So you need to choose someone you trust. Okay. So when I had the client where we needed to just get them to not say anything until we were ready, and then when we were ready, I believe it was 2 sentences, and that's it. That's all of it, because there were so many tentacles of how this could go sideways, even though there was no fault. It's optics, right? And people will assume what they want to assume. And your job is to control that environment so that people are not misinformed. You're not there to spin it. You're not there to make stuff up. You're there to inform people so that they understand the situation, how they can get involved if you need help with that, and how to start to tell the story of your brand all over again, which is a whole other topic that we can get to in another place. But you need someone that you can trust, that if you say, you cannot say anything about such and such, they have to be able to listen to that and not say, well, I feel personally involved, or I'm slighted about this, or I know the victim, or anything like that. You cannot let that drive the way that you're communicating with people. You have to have a person that is on board with the overall brand, the mission and the vision of your play experience, and how you integrate that into your community. It is tougher when the dog parks are apart from the community instead of a part of the community, because it's not, first of mind. So it's kind of a problem, but again, you can overcome that with these steps. Okay. Step 5 is before anything happens, especially in this situation, right? You've got to take these steps in a manner that allows you to have the breathing room to think clearly, act on your feet, and have good results. Okay. So mismanaged communication, that can be worse than the incident itself. Have you seen that happen? I'm guessing that you have. I know I have. So, we're in Dayton, Ohio, and I remember our local sports team changed their logo, and it was this like huge storm of people, just outraged that this is happening. And it's just a logo for a basketball team. But even that, people were not so much mad about the logo, although they weren't crazy about that. But the communication style around it, everybody was like, why didn't you ask me? Right? Like they're going to ask each basketball fan, but why didn't you ask me? I have an opinion. Why didn't you come to the community? And I assure you that they did do some of that. But people, if they don't feel listened to and they don't feel like you're sharing a story with someone who cares, then it really goes in one ear and at the other. You're not going to have that credibility, and that communication experience for you, for the public, for anyone who's watching you on tape when you were on Channel 7, all of that is going to stick, and that is now a part of your brand story. So yes, it is about dealing with something that's very sensitive. Yes, it is important to focus on the human and the dog elements, but yes, it is important for you to recognize that you can affect the users, and the experience reputation for your entire community by mismanaging this stuff. Okay. So your needs and your solutions are going to evolve. If you change the footprint of your park, for instance, or you engage in new programming, anything that you do is you should be going back to step 1, identifying those factors with people or with the facility or with the dogs. What are those new factors that could be brought into bear because of the changes that you've made to your park, or because of the changes in your community, or because of changes in legislation? All of those things are factors that require you to update your plans at least once a year. You need to never be in a situation where you're like, something has happened. I know we did this plan thingy, but I'm not sure where it is. And there was somebody in charge, and I think it was Carol, but now she's gone. Right. And so you cannot just leave it in a binder. This has to be a living document that you can use on a regular basis to make sure that you are on point with your message at the right time to handle this, because it's part of the story and the journey of dogs and how their life journey goes in your community. Okay, so I want you to ask the same questions that we asked at the last time we talked. We all have expectations as to the appearance and performance of a dog park. What do you want it to feel like, and what experience would you rather have had than you have not before? Okay, it's the same thing with crisis comm. All right, people have expectations about the park, about the people that they're going to have there, and it's your job to manage those expectations, but also to manage some outcomes from that. And that's what this crisis comm is all about. So it's passion, right? It's fear, it's protection, it's winning the argument. All of those things are going to be a factor in that. And so when you know that it's influenced by those things, you need to have solutions. So this is just a simple thing. If you want to scan the QR code, that will be something where you can download this file. Something like this posted there can help you out a lot in terms of just giving people some structure around things that they should happen to come about at one of their visits. So for instance, stop the behavior. And I'm talking about dog on dog, dog on human, human on human. If there is an incident at the park, I don't care who's responsible. I don't care what's going on. It needs to stop, because as you know, with dogs and humans, it heats up and it's going to potentially get away from you. I don't know if you've seen that before, but people can get a little out of hand. Okay, also, safely remove the dogs and the humans from the park area. If it's a situation that's not safe, then it absolutely should not be contained in the dog park where other dogs and other humans can get involved in that. If there's a safety issue with the dogs, now I'm not a doctor, I'm not an attorney, so this is just my advice based on my experience and based on my research. But what I'm saying is that you need to get things safe and under control. You need to make sure that people are there and they exchange their information. You should treat any incident at the park just like a car accident. Exchange information, really drill into how can I reach you and agree to stay in touch. There could be injuries, there could be hurt feelings, and everything in between. And so you want to make sure that you know who you're talking to, how to reach them. There could be outcomes or solutions that you have. You're going to need to know who those solutions are for and who you can benefit with those. And then take photos. Take photos related to the incident of, and people may not like that, right? Privacy, but insist you would take a picture of your car if it was hit, right? So this is an incident. If your dog was nipped, it may just be, certain parts of a dog bleed like crazy. So it could just be something like that, but it looks horrific in the moment. And it's one of those fear things, right? Attached to passion in your dog. So you need to take that and then report the incident. And for this is a little bit of legwork on you, but you need to reach out to first responders and the legal environment in your area, law enforcement, Parks and Rec, whoever it is that's managing that park, and talk to them about the correct way to report the incidents. So there's a great officer up in Cleveland Heights, I think she is, and they work with their community to have this collaboration between dog walkers and the police department. And one of the conversations that they have between the police department and the dog walkers is, hey, dog walkers, you literally are walking all of the streets that we patrol in this community. Here's what you should watch out for. If you see this, it's not really a 911 call, but do call this number. If you see this, you don't even need to call, but here's an app where you can upload a picture of the problem. However it is that they handle those situations in that community, make sure that you're in lockstep with that. Because again, you don't want to have a situation where people, they're looking and they see this sign and they're like, okay, report it. But report how? You need to decide for your community and for your user base or for your business, whatever the space may be, what's appropriate action at that time. Who are you supposed to let know? So at that point, you're bringing in people that can help you make decisions, can help back you up with what is okay and not to say and to say. So all of those things can be made so much easier. And when you take these steps, now you're contributing to overall dog friendliness as well, because people associate a good experience with dog play. Okay. All right. So I'm going to leave this up here so that you can scan if you want to get a hold of me. But I see that we have a couple of comments. I'm sorry I haven't been. See, first one in here is Dog Connection TV. I don't know if you know, Kathy is amazing. And Kathy, you used to be so proud of me. I'm doing this without your production help today, and it's very nerve-wracking, but hopefully everything's going okay. So Kathy is a fantastic animal advocate, and dogs in particular. So if you get a chance to check out her Dog Connection TV, and she can tell you all kinds of just pull your heart out and just either hug it or tear it apart, man. The passion and the love for dogs, I can see even from the people that are on the list of the comments. I know a lot of you have reached out to me about your dogs in the past or your relationships with them. And so I know this resonates with you. So let's see. Yes, we are happy. Oh, thanks, Warren. Happy Thursday to you too. All right, I think we had a question. Oh, Liz, thank you for this. So much useful information that you're sharing. Thank you for that. Oh, yeah. Now, Liz is fascinating to talk to you about this because she's really in tune with communicating with animals. And so her perspective on how dogs view that play space and what the experience is like, that's something you should explore. What if you could ask the dog's opinion on how things go, right? Wouldn't that be great? We all are talking about how we wish we could talk to their dogs and that they could talk to us and tell us what's going on. It's probably good at sometimes that they can't talk because we tell them all kinds of things. But in this instance, wouldn't it be great to have that information? So reaching out and having somebody like Liz on your team would be super critical on that. Let's see. Yes. Yeah, our girls, right? So let me tell you another great thing about Kathy is we're working on this project together with the Golden Girls communities. And it's this amazing group where they're bringing in women who are in the senior category, who are alone, who love dogs and have a dog, to come together in a learning and living space where they can find purpose and individual adventures in that stage of their life with their friends and with their dogs and bringing people together. And so that's an example of a community that has actually built around the concept of Smart Dog Park, that you bring in safety and manners and awareness, responsibility and training, but in a way that accentuates your community and brings people together to find solutions and to find each other through dogs. So, oh yeah, let's see. Warren. Hi, Warren. You get the badge for most friendly today. Let's see. There are many critical components in this conversation that we will never stop to consider. Your points are crucial to help all members of a community to get full benefits of dog parks and realize economic, social, and communal impact beyond your park. I love that you said that part about communal, because when we talked about the crisis communication plan being a reflection of the community, I think that's where this really comes in, is that your response, while I could give you some templates for that, you really need to know your community, what makes it tick, what are your flash points, what are your pain points, so that when you have your plan for how you communicate, you're not talking in some other language, okay? And not literally, but right, you have to be on the same page as those people. Okay, thanks, Sarah, for that. I wanted to feel like home. Yeah, exactly. Interesting that dog park info usually talks about rules, but not how to handle the situation if something happens. Yeah, in the case of Flyer, I know it's amazing to me that I've been going through city by city, and I pull up and do this at your city. Okay, so look up city of whatever.gov and just type in a search for the word dog, and I guarantee you that at least 95% of you are going to see something pop up that says, these are all the things that you cannot do with your dog, and these are all the things that will happen to you if you do them. And then here are all the rules that you need to know so you don't get in trouble later on. But there's never information about, like, here's where you and your dog can go. Here's a list of dog-friendly restaurants. Click here to go to the restaurant association, and they have a little icon where you can take your dog to the patio. This is where you can find emergency veterinary information. Why isn't that the information that's available to you when you're asking about dog play? That should be the kind of information you get, not don't do this or we're going to do that to you, right? So again, this kind of communication allows you to have better relationships with all of those people so that that reaction behavior doesn't happen. Okay, let's see. Charlie, yeah. All right, how many of us talk to their dog? I know, they're great listeners. I wonder what they think of me sometimes. I don't know. Liz, she thinks that, they love me. So I love Liz for that. Okay. Oh, of course, Kathy. Let's see. Let's say someone has a bad experience with dog parks. Would you help them to feel comfortable returning one? Oh, that's a great question. And I'm sorry, but the answer has to be it depends, because you're going to need to find someone who understands dog reactivity. You're going to need to find someone who understands the human component of that. When I talk with Deborah Hamilton, we'll be talking a lot about the human component of how these situations can be impacted by good or bad behavior. But as far as the dog, you need to understand that they have the same things that you do. They have a passion, and it's about being with you and about being a dog. And they have fear about things, and you don't know what all of those things are. All right. That's something very important that you need to consider. And then, it's the same thing with them. They like winning at playing, right? And if they have a problem, then they want to, attack and be protected in a way that they are. And some dogs, it's just a physical stance. Some of them, it's walking away. It's just like us, fight or flight, right? So they're going to make a decision based on that, and they need you to appreciate that and be there with them. So if my dog had an incident at the park, I actually talked with someone this morning that she was the person who was the champion in her community that said, hey, we'd love to have off-leash play options for dogs in our community. So the powers that be said, sure, get 250 signatures and do blah, 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 and then we'll take a look at it. So she does all this legwork and has this dog park put in. It's beautiful. And then now she can't go there because there were a pair of huskies that somebody wasn't really paying attention to. They were being bullies with her dog, and it caused a reactivity reaction that the dog still has because of that. So now she has the situation where, because there wasn't really a good understanding about what's appropriate behavior at the dog park, which changes, right? Then now what is she supposed to do? She did all this work to get the dog park there, and now she can't even go there, right? So in that situation, the dog is going to have some reactivity, I believe, when they get there. I would certainly want you to talk with somebody who understands the way that dogs think. Like Billy Groom talks about canine cognitive behavior training. And that's much more about helping the dog work through things than it is about you training your dog to sit and to be positively reinforced for tricks. So it's much more about helping them, almost like a therapist, get through that, what they're thinking, how they're feeling. Because if they're not going to be ready to go back to that, we have experiences in our life where we're like, yeah, I don't really need to do that again, right? But for some dogs, they really crave that. And for some people, they really need that. So it's important for all of us to remember that people go to dog parks for a variety of reasons, but all of us want there to be a safe environment where we feel like we have a sense of belonging, but that it's safe. So that's why with SMART, when you're doing this plan, take into consideration what's going to be happening, who's going to talk about it, and what you're going to say. All of those things need to be firmly embedded, documented, and ready to roll, so that if there is a problem, then you can actually, address it in a way that's a little more effective than, oh, blank, right? The expletives start flying at that point. So you really want to avoid those moments by being in charge of it and not letting the event be in charge of you. So think about what you need to do. Create your team, assess your site, catastrophize. I'm telling you, that's really important. You have to figure out what could possibly go wrong and then plan for that. Even if it seems ridiculous that it wouldn't happen, right? Like I'm in Ohio, so the chances that a group here would have a plan for a natural disaster or even a go bag, other than fire, we really don't do the whole go bag thing in Ohio because we don't have natural disasters. So yeah, there's that. But let's suppose that I did move somewhere where they have that, right? Then I need to know that information. I need to be prepared. I'm asking you to do the same thing. Realize where you are, realize what your resources are, and remember to document something so that when it does happen, you are in charge of planning crisis communication instead of reacting to a crisis where you're forced to communicate. It's a huge difference. And again, that is where the future of dog parks is going to be successful, is when we communicate more effectively, when we're more collaborative with those communications, and when our goal is an enriching environment where people feel safe, like they belong, and where they can really be enriched with freedom to play. Question. Oh, you're from Ohio. Woohoo, go Buckeyes. I know. Sorry, Michigan fans. Let's see. Oh, thank you, Kathy. All right. Well, I think I hit all the questions. I know I had a few questions that came in through LinkedIn and Facebook that I've DM'd people answers to those. If you have other questions, then feel free to reach out to me. If you go to smartdogpark.com, if you look at the top, there's a little innovator quiz you can take, and there's also a click to sign up for the newsletter where you can get a copy of this incident form. So it's got it right here. You can laminate it or however you want to post it at your site. It's just a quick and easy thing to do, and it's free. So I hope that helps you. So anyway, let's talk about that dog park stuff again. Let's do this every month. So I'm going to be coming back here to talk to you about using events as a revenue stream and as a part of your brand structure. So today we talked a lot about what could be happening to your park that's bad or good, and how you handle that crisis through communications and team building. So hopefully you will turn off this recording, grab a piece of paper, call your friends, and start developing this 5-step process, and then repeating it at least once a year so that you can protect the brand, the dogs, and your community to have a better future for your dog parks and everybody else that lives there. Okay? All right. Thanks again for tuning in. We have some great stuff coming up for you next. If you want to be updated on when we're going to be broadcasting and other special announcements, like something I can't tell you about yet because it's very exciting, but you're going to love it, please feel free to go to smartdogpark.com and sign up for our newsletter. I'd love to talk with you and share what we're working on. So thanks again for watching. I really appreciate your attention and your time and your enthusiasm. So tell your dog I said hi and keep wagging. Goodbye, everyone.